If you have a tool that is assessing the pace of learning and is assessing the well-being of students for you and presenting you with information about individual children that can help inform the way you teach, that has got to be a positive.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the CyberWire's Hacking Humans podcast, where each week we look behind the social engineering scams, the phishing schemes, and criminal exploits that are making headlines and taking a heavy toll on organizations around the world. I'm Dave Bittner from the CyberWire, and joining me is Joe Kerrigan from the Johns Hopkins University Information Security Institute. Hello, Joe.
Hi, Dave.
Got some good stories to share this week, and later in the show, my conversation with Justin Reilley. He is the CEO of Impero, and we're going to be talking about the mental health of kids in the digital age. Hey, so this is your boss speaking. I'm going to need you to go ahead and wire transfer some company funds to an account that I'll send you. I'm going to need that done today. Don't worry about clearing it through finance. They already know about it. I promise. So, this is obviously not your boss, but cyber criminals try this exact tactic all the time in the form of email CEO fraud, also known as business email compromise. They'll spoof your CEO or CFO's email address, send finance or HR an email about transferring money or sharing sensitive employee data, and an unsuspecting and untrained employee just might do it. Our sponsor, KnowBe4, providers of the world's largest security awareness training and simulated phishing platform, know a thing or two about equipping employees to handle these threats. We'll learn how later in the show. All right, Joe, let's jump into some stories this week. My story this week is actually some research. This is a white paper that was published by the folks over at CloudSec. They're a security company. And it's titled Unearthing the $1 Million Scams Targeting the Indian Electric Vehicle Industry.
Really?
Yeah. Now, electric vehicles are hot.
Yes. Especially when they use their batteries up.
Ba-dum-bum. And you know, I think electric vehicles have, in some ways, taken off a lot faster than some people expected that they would.
Right.
It's one of those transitions that's slowly, and then quickly.
Right. Yeah, there was all kinds of attempts at the electric car back in the 80s and 90s.
Right.
There's even an Ed Begley Jr. movie, Who Killed the Electric Car?
Yeah.
Which is a good movie if you watch it. But
this story is about not so much cars, but electric bikes and scooters, which are very popular in India. A great way for people to get around and very cost-effective. You know, and when you have congested cities and so on and so forth, there's a great way to get around. Doesn't cost a lot of money. And a great thing about an electric is, you know, you're not unlike a two-stroke engine that a lot of scooters and mopeds and things like that.
Those things are noisy and dirty.
So this is much better for the environment. So this is a hot market in India. So what the scammers have done is they have created phishing lures, and they're using Google Ads on keyword searches for folks who are looking to open e-bike dealerships.
Really?
So they're taking advantage of people who have a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit, who are trying to get in on this, this wave of electric vehicles.
Right, it's a growing market.
The popularity in India in particular.
And you know what's most important about these people, Dave?
What's that?
They probably have money to invest.
Well, there you go.
Right.
But you know what? I was thinking about this, and I think this is one of those things where, yes, you need some money to invest, but it's not like you're opening a car dealership.
Right.
Where you need millions and millions of dollars. You know, probably, I don't know, $100,000 or something. You could open a scooter dealership or something like that. And that's the kind of thing where you could get together with some friends, pool your resources, and you're in business.
Yeah, but if I was a scammer, $100,000 would be a good target for me.
Yeah.
That'd be a good day if I can scam somebody out of that money.
Right, exactly. So what these folks are doing is they run these Google ads, they attract people, and then they send them to fake websites. And they say, so you want to be a dealer for our electric scooters, our electric bikes. And so now they start gathering information from the folks, and they lead them down a path of pretending like they're sending them, that they're setting them up to be a dealer. And at some point, they ask for some money, Here's the deposit we need before we ship you these things. Here's the deposit we need to get your paperwork going.
Right.
And on and on and on. And then, that's ultimately where the scam goes. There is no dealership. There are no bikes. There's, nothing like that.
Right.
But they've set up all this infrastructure with these websites that look legit. This report has some pictures of some of the websites that they've set up.
And there's probably a significant lag time between the time you send them the money and they promise anything is going to happen.
Right.
So that gives them time to move the money out of the account so you can't get it back.
That's right. That's right. And they also show some of the Google ads that these folks are putting out there. Like one of them says, "Apply for e-bike dealership. Apply now." Another one says, "E-bike India. Ride the future. Book your electric scooter now. Come and be part of accelerating mobility for the future generations." Mm-hmm. So apply for a dealership. So I just think this is interesting in that, this is kind of it's more than a scam targeting consumers, right? It's, as you said, it's targeting folks who have a little more money to lose, are excited about perhaps starting a business, right? Making a better life for themselves, right? As we all would like to do, anybody who's been an entrepreneur. So taking advantage of a person who is in that emotional state of having that combination of some resources and some ambition.
And I'm sure this process is very convincing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It looks to me like this is something that starts off with, okay, we've got somebody on the line, right? We've got one on the hook. Let's begin the process of emulating what this would look like in the real world if somebody was actually trying to open a scooter dealership.
Yeah.
And then at some point in time, and they probably have multiple people on the hook at all times, just like any organization does.
Right.
And then at some point in time, they take the money and they're gone.
Yeah. Yeah. So, recommendations, these are familiar things. Don't click on the ad.
Right.
If you see an ad and you're interested in something like this, if you wanted to become an e-scooter dealer, first search for the legitimate brands out there. And, do the work and find out what their legitimate website is. Reach out to them that way.
Yeah, you're going to have to I don't know how the legal system works in India, but if I was doing this in the U.S., I would definitely have an attorney involved, right? Just to make sure that I'm dealing with the right people so that I don't get scammed. But, again, that's another cost that I'm going to have to incur. Also, I'm going to, in this kind of case, let's say I was going to open a franchise. And I want to open Arby's franchise.
Sure.
Let's just pick one.
Why not?
I'm not doing that until I go to Arby's headquarters.
Okay.
I'm going to go there and talk to them and make sure and meet these people face to face, because a franchise is not a small investment, right?
Yeah.
It's a large investment. So I'm going to go out and meet these people. Same with a dealership. I'm going to go to an office space, a physical office space, and meet these people. And that's how I'm going to protect myself against this.
Yeah.
The other thing is, it's interesting that this is this starts with Google ads, search ads. This is a problem that we've been talking about for a number of years with Google about their ads. And frankly, they're not incentivized to stop it because these scammers do give them money to run the ads.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a large portion of their business model, but they do have a perverse incentive to not stop this from happening.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they don't stop it from happening. They may very well make an effort to do that, but the incentive is not there.
Right. And I think it's very much a cat and mouse game because you've got, the scammers figure out ways to avoid or evade the automated systems that Google has to sort of root these things out.
That's right.
And so then Google is left playing a game of whack-a-mole where they're responding to reports. And I think, Google does in good faith take things down when they're reported to them. But if something figures out a way to avoid their automation, it's hard for Google to do that. As I always say, operating at scale, right? Well, if you can't do that at scale, maybe you shouldn't do that. So that's where we are, right?
Yeah, that's where we are.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's an interesting report and slightly different than some of the ones we've seen, and that's what caught my eye about it. We will have a link to that in the show notes. Again, that is from the folks over at CloudSec. All right, Joe, that's my story this week. What do you have for us?
Dave, my story comes from Vade Security. They're a French company. And they have released what they call their 2021 Phishers Favorite Report, which is a pretty good report. It's 16 pages. You do have to cough up an email to get the report, though. So keep that in mind. Let's play some games, Dave.
Okay.
I love doing these when we get these kind of reports out.
Okay.
If you were going to pick the number one impersonated brand in a phishing attack, what do you think it would be?
I would say it's probably a shipping company. So I would say like UPS or FedEx.
Wrong.
Okay.
The number one, and this is new from this year, it's up, is Facebook.
Really?
Facebook is number one.
Okay.
In fact, the first shipping company isn't even on this list until number 11, it looks like. And it is not FedEx or UPS.
Okay.
Can you guess who it is?
Oh, what's the international one?
Yep. You're on the right track.
Yeah.
Red and yellow.
Yeah, it's like 3 letters.
DHL.
DHL. Thank you very much. Okay. Yeah.
Now, if you're going to pick cloud services, who do you think the number one cloud service in impersonation would be?
I would go with AWS.
You'd be wrong again. Microsoft.
Microsoft. Okay.
Right. Now, if you were going to pick the largest e-commerce site.
That would be Amazon.
There you go. Ding, 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 ding. You got it.
Okay. I'd be doing all right if I was a baseball player. 1 out of 3.
Right.
Okay.
Now, their financial services website is a French company that I've never heard of. But so let's discount that one, Dave.
Okay.
If you were going to go with another financial services company, what do you think is second on their financial list?
Financial services company?
Yes.
I would say like Merrill Lynch or one of those.
Okay. Well, if you're going to go with like traditional financial services company, you're close. It's Wells Fargo, but higher on the list is actually PayPal.
Oh, okay.
PayPal is pretty high on the list.
Yeah, I guess I don't reflexively think of PayPal as being a financial services company.
We don't think of that.
Yeah.
I find it interesting that Facebook is dominating the social media phishing. And, I think I know why that is.
Yeah.
And here's my suspicion. First off, I think Facebook accounts are valuable, particularly when you build a business presence on them, right? Now, we're in the process of doing this with my wife. She's starting a small business.
Okay.
And one of my concerns is the security of her personal account because she's an admin on the business page that she has, right?
I see.
I'm also an admin. Our daughter is also an admin. But if they got access to her account, her personal account, they could come into that page, kick my daughter and me off of as admins and start marketing anything else, change everything about it, take complete control of it. And we've seen that happen.
Right.
And getting that back from Facebook is very, very difficult.
Oh, you should just call up Facebook customer support, Joe. Just call the 1-800 number. Someone will answer the phone and be on your request
Hey, Joe,
right
what
away.
can I do for you?
Yeah. Oh, Joe, good to hear from you again. What? Someone took over this? Oh, well, that won't stand.
We'll fix that right now.
I'm just going to do it right now while I have you on the line. Yeah.
It's a service. It's a service that people would even gladly pay for, right?
Right.
Like if Facebook had a page recovery, a page recovery feature that you could pay $100 to get your business page back.
Yeah. Name your price. Talk about your perverse incentives.
Right. People would pay for that.
Yeah.
Especially if their business pages got taken over. Our catch of the day is actually from a friend of mine, and it's from a person who I don't know if they're impersonating his friend or if they took over his account, but they're trying to scam him. So that's another use case for these social media accounts.
Yeah.
Whenever you get a message from somebody that's kind of out of the blue and unexpected, you should be alert, right?
Right.
If you haven't heard from somebody in a while and all of a sudden they're talking to you about something, either maybe their account's been broken into or perhaps they've become involved in some kind of multi-level marketing program.
Right.
In which case,
either way.
Right, either way.
Shields up.
Right.
Okay.
They have some interesting data in here about statistics on timing. Monday and Tuesday are the top days for phishing, which I think is interesting. 70% 78% of phishing attacks occur on weekdays. These guys have regular jobs, Dave.
Yeah. Yeah.
Phishers.
9 to 5. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Monday and Thursday are the top days for phishing Facebook, and Thursday and Friday are the top days for phishing Microsoft, phishing for Microsoft credentials.
Huh.
Which, that doesn't surprise me, right? Because if you're phishing somebody for Microsoft credentials, you're probably going after a Microsoft 365 account that a business uses.
Right.
And the best days to hit those are at the end of the week when people are tired and they're just looking forward to getting out of
Just want to clean out that inbox and hit the weekend. Yeah. Yep. Makes sense.
So the report is from Vade Security. You can check it out if you want. They have a pretty good summary on the page, on the link that we'll put in the show notes. But if you want to click through and get the whole report, it's a pretty good report.
Yeah. All right.
But it's got a lot of interesting statistics. And you know, Dave, I love statistics.
Yes, you do. All right. Well, it's time to move on to our catch of the day.
As I said before, Dave, our catch of the day comes from a friend and former coworker of mine named Bob. Bob, by the way, writes beautiful code.
Okay.
You know, you ever see someone's code when they write it and it's just like, you haven't even read the code yet, but you look at it and it's just like, man, that looks nice.
It's a work of art.
It's a work of art. Bob's code was always like that.
All right.
So, like I said, Bob has been...
Wait. What was your code like, Joe?
My code was also like that. I've had people tell me the same thing.
Oh, okay.
Because I'm meticulous. Maybe that's why I appreciate Bob's style layout.
Okay.
Because maybe what I'm actually saying is that Bob and I have the same kind of style layout that we do in our code.
I see. Okay. All right. Good enough. Fair enough.
But it makes it easier for me to read the code.
Yeah.
So Bob has a friend named Darren, and I don't know if this is Darren's account that got compromised or somebody is impersonating Darren, but somebody is sending Bob a message, and Bob, of course, realizes immediately this is not Darren. So why don't you play the part of Darren, and I'll play the part of Bob.
Okay. Hello, how are you doing?
What's up?
Am good. Did you watch the news last week about Steve Phillips? He is the agent in charge of the new program by the federal government for those who need assistance paying bills, buying a home, starting their own business, going to school, or even helping raise their children. With old and retired people and disabled, I got $85,000 delivered to me when I apply for the grant, and you don't have to pay it back.
Damn, can I borrow $5,000?
Let me give you the link to text him. I'm sure you will qualify for it.
I don't need the link to text him.
Trust me.
Don't send.
Oh, okay. If you can't, bye.
Can I just borrow $5,000 from you?
No.
Come on, bro. You don't need $85,000. How about just $2,000?
Have use it for basic things.
Oh, how about $500? So at this point, Bob just starts messing with me and goes, hey, how are you doing? Did you hear about the actress that got stabbed last week? Reese something. I'll pretend you said Witherspoon, and then I'll say no with a knife. Are you there? Can you still hear me? Hey, did you hear the news last week about Steve Phillips? I'll send you the link to text him. Hold on. So Bob just starts copying and pasting the guy's messages back to him.
Right.
But by the time this has started, the guys realize what's going on.
He's probably blocked him.
He's probably blocked him,
Yeah. Now, I've had this happen to me before where a friend's account has been compromised and they start texting me out of the blue. I think the point you made earlier in the show about, I think particularly if you start getting text messages from someone who has never texted you before,
right,
and they're this casual and you know, then that's obviously a big red flag.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. All right. Well, a good catch of the day. We would love to hear from you. If you have something you would like for us to share on the show, you can email us. It's hackinghumans@thecyberwire.com. And now, a word from our sponsor, KnowBefore. They see the way to address the ongoing problem of CEO fraud as multi-pronged. 1. See if your work email domain is vulnerable to spoofing. KnowBefore has a free tool that will do just that called the Domain Spoof Test, available at knowbefore.com/DST. 2. If a CEO fraud email does get through, well-educated employees are your best last line of defense against lost funds and a bruised corporate reputation. Regular, repeated simulating phishing tests and training are the best way to equip employees against these threats. So check out the domain spoof test. That's at knowbefore.com/DST. Think of KnowBefore for your security training. Joe, I recently had the pleasure of speaking with Justin Reilley. He is the CEO of a company called Impero, and we discussed the mental health of kids in the digital age, and particularly the transition that we've seen as kids had to go to school remotely over the past years, and some of the software that has sort of inserted itself into that kid-teacher relationship. Here's my conversation with Justin Reilley.
I think it stands to reason that using technology in some subjects is far more straightforward than using in others. If you look at mathematics, which is my background, versus English, it is much harder to use the technology to assess English literature responses to questions than it is to assess mathematics. It's not completely difficult, it's not impossible, but nonetheless, the technology is quite different. And the subject matter content will lend itself either to the use of technology or otherwise. But I think if you look at how teachers are interacting with learners and how they're using technology in the classroom, it's come to a bit of a head thanks to the pandemic. I mean, certainly my perception is that where there was a reluctance prior to the pandemic to use technology across a lot of the profession, a significant amount of that has gone away because we were forced through various different lockdowns, various different stages, to embrace either hybrid learning or remote learning or some combination thereof. And we're still seeing, across the board, whilst majoritively people are back in the classroom, there is certainly still elements where children are being sent home or have got COVID and need to work from home, or teachers are off because they've been tested positive and that's impacting schools' ability to teach normally. So we're not out of the woods yet. I think we all agree it's moving in the right direction, but nonetheless, it's not there yet. And so what it means is, at the moment, I think you have teachers who are more prepared to use technology, and not just for assessment and setting of homework, which is positive, but actually to use it from an instructional point of view. And you have organizations who are busy creating the tools and the content to help teachers to deliver education virtually or face-to-face in use of technology. And the number of devices, in the US, you're almost at a 1-to-1 ratio of device to learner. So access to that material is also much more prevalent. It certainly is something that we're going to see increasing throughout the world, and we're moving in that direction.
So before we talk about the potential to assess students' mental health, can we talk about just privacy in general? When software developers like yourselves are working on these sort of solutions, what is the approach to the privacy for students?
I can only talk about our organization, but I think this is certainly true of the majority of my peers. We put data privacy and the child very much at the center of what we do. And we work daily to try and protect children. And that comes in various different formats. The first one is to make sure that only those that have access or have a need to have access to the data get access to the data. And secondly, what data they can access should be dictated by their role. In other words, it's not a free-for-all, dip in and have a look around. Then you've got to look at who owns the data. Actually, we are not the data owner. We process data, and we enlighten teachers and educators to some of the outcomes from that processing. But we absolutely don't own the rights to that data. Now, once we've done analysis and we've created, should we say, information for teachers to use, that's then put into the hands of those teachers, and it's for them to go and use, or a counsellor or a digital safeguarding lead or whoever it may be. So in order to do that, we have to get permission from each and every school to do that within the school context. We don't have the right to pull the data out and use it unless the school has assessed what we're doing with it and ensured that we're complying with all the decent regulations and rules that we have to. So as it stands at the moment, we are GDPR compliant. We applied to COPPA, FERPA. We go through them all.
So in terms of assessing a student's mental health and determining if a child may be struggling, In a classroom, I think good teachers have a sense for this. They can tell if a child is having not a good day or worse. How do you go about doing an assessment like that with their online interactions?
So one of the things we are looking at, and this is one of a number of different things that we look at, is what they're trying to do. So, for example, we have keyword detection, where we have a list of around 27,500 keywords covering a very large array of different topics with different levels of severity. I think one of the things, being a UK started organisation, we're certainly not a UK-based organisation now. We're predominantly US, and we're in fact, about 100 different countries. But one of the things that we gain from being in the UK is their regulation around safeguarding and well-being is slightly enhanced. So there is an expectation that all schools are monitoring digitally what children are doing against that array of different topics. And that could range from eating disorders to domestic abuse to bullying, all the way up to the ones that we are particularly scared about, obviously shooting, suicide, et cetera, et cetera. So by watching what they're doing, by looking at the keywords, by then assessing the keyword against the context, and we're in the process of refining our artificial intelligence to really be better at understanding that context, we can begin to build a profile. In one of our products, Wellbeing, we're also encouraging teachers to manually input their observations as well, to put alongside those digital observations the very things that they see. Little Johnny was quiet today, or had a bruise on him, or something that may add a dimension to that chronology as well. And it's by viewing that chronology that we start to get a sense of the well-being around that particular child, and whether there's potentially a mental health issue or something that we should be flagging to people within the school.
How do you determine who is the most appropriate party to be alerted that there's an issue? And because I'm thinking, if a child could have an issue with a teacher, a child could have an issue with a parent, or with another child. Is there a way that you look at this and decide who best to notify?
Well, we won't make those decisions. The decisions would come from the school. So we would expect the school to work with us to identify who the right character and the right player in that child's life would be. Where we're moving towards is a place where we're much more precise on that particular nature. You use the example of the child may have an issue with the teacher. You wouldn't flag a concern of that nature to that particular teacher for obvious reasons. You would need to find a counsellor or someone else that was within the school that would be the right person to contact. And likewise, if you're talking domestic abuse, the last thing you want to do is to send a text to the parent and say, hey, we think there's this problem going on. That in itself would be just a trigger. So prior to the use of something like wellbeing, there is time spent with the school to understand who within the school should be contacted for what types of events or what types of concerns that we've got coming up. When it comes to digital safeguarding, of course, this is going to be on a response to something the child has done on the computer. So it will be, I use eating disorder as a good example. If we know that a child has got an eating disorder and we see that they're searching for appetite suppressant pages or articles, then we would flag that to the right person within the organisation so they could then run the intervention. We don't do the intervention. It's not on us to do that. We can't do that. We're too removed.
Do you have any examples of success stories here where you have flagged something and it's led to good outcomes for the students?
Well, there are many. I mean, obviously, it's difficult to use real people in these conversations, and as much as I'd love to, I can't. But I think probably the one that stands out, prior to the pandemic, I was down at a show in Florida, really good show, based out in Miami Beach, and I had a teacher come up and thank me immediately for saving the lives of 2 children within the school. And obviously, to us, that's anecdotal. We're saying, well, that's fantastic. That's why we're here, right? But give us a bit more information. And essentially, he said we had flagged there was a concern through our systems that there were 2 children who had been looking at sites that were related to suicide. And on further investigation, they were both children that had been considering it very seriously, and that intervention had worked. So, that's why we're here. That's why we do what we're doing. But it isn't only about that. That's sort of the extreme edge, if you like. The other edge, if you bring it in, is also on the impact of learning. So for every one child that we can save on something as severe as, say, a shooting or as a suicide, on the flip side, you've got to also consider the many, many children whose education is being impacted because they're just not in a happy place. They need to be more settled. They need support with some issues that will then help them to be successful in the learning environment. Because ultimately, education, that's at its core. That's what teachers are there for.
What is the reaction of the teachers to this? I mean, it strikes me that, this helps them do their job and can help take some of the burden off of them. We all know teachers are overworked. And so I could imagine that with everything they have to do, they probably appreciate something like this sort of having their back, being another set of eyes on their students.
That's my impression. I mean, I am a teacher. I started my career as a mathematics teacher in a high school in central London. So I'm well aware of the pressure that is being placed on individual teachers. And in fact, I'd say the pressures now are far greater than when I was in the classroom. My view is that if we can provide information to a teacher that helps them to intervene earlier, that's a good thing. And if that intervention is, as I say, regarding learning as well as anything else, that is also a good thing, because the same digital tools can also help us to identify how productive somebody is in the classroom. Are they on task? Are they off task? Really simple things like that can make quite a difference to how a teacher is engaging with the class. We talk about mobility in a classroom. Well, the digital classroom is no different. You need to be moving amongst the students to see how they're getting on. But if you have a tool that is assessing the pace of learning and is assessing the well-being of students for you and presenting you with information about individual children that can help inform the way you teach, that has got to be a positive. And so, I absolutely think teachers embrace this. When it's used fully, it becomes a very powerful aid.
How do you strike the balance between doing what you're doing here, but also respecting people's privacy? I can imagine, there are probably folks out there who would push back on this sort of thing, as they do on anything that they would see as perhaps being a little invasive.
I think we need to understand what invasive means on this one, because having the data and holding the data and never letting go of the data for no purpose. In other words, having that data doesn't help anybody do anything. I think they would have a genuine point, wouldn't they? If, again, when they ask you to remove the data after a period of time, if you refuse to do so, again, I think they would have a genuine case. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about using data to understand and learn and improve and inform, and it's as simple as that. And as soon as it served that purpose, it should no longer be with us. We should be removing any data that is, and we do, removing any data that is no longer valid, no longer required, or is about an individual that we have no purpose to view. And I think there are some really strict rules that we do need to be following to make sure that people can feel comfortable that the data is only being used for something honourable and genuine, and that at no point is it being used to, let's say, monetize in a different direction. And those are, again, in our industry, certainly the leading players. We absolutely focus on that. We don't want to be doing anything that is an imposition or is contravening people's own personal liberties. And I think that's a very important distinction. But at the same time, if I've got an opportunity to assess millions of children, to understand better the early triggers that may lead to an event, I think we have an obligation to do that as well. And I think being able to assess data en masse, whether it's anonymized or pseudonymized or however, in order to be able to very quickly identify a pool of children who are potentially at some point in the future going to be at risk and intervene before it becomes a problem, I also think that's very, very important. The damage is often done once you get in front of a child. So the sooner we can get in front of them, the better.
All right, Joe, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about this, Dave. I think that aiding in teachers updating their teaching style for kids is great.
Yeah.
Right. And that software that says, okay, maybe these kids need you to do something different, right? That's fine. That's wonderful. You mentioned this before the interview, and I'm not going out on a limb on saying this, that the education system globally has been really disrupted for the past 2 years or so. And that has had an impact, and that we are going to be seeing that impact for years to come.
Mm-hmm.
We can all agree that privacy in education is paramount, right?
Right.
Again, not a controversial statement. I'm not going out on a limb and saying anything here. But it's much more important when you're evaluating the mental health of a student as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad to hear that Justin has a serious attitude about the privacy of the data for his students, and he's not using it as marketing data. That's great. That's fantastic.
Yep.
And the examples he provides are wonderful. It is fantastic that he was able to provide information that allowed teachers to intervene in the case of suicidal students or students who are considering suicide. Fantastic. Good work.
Mm-hmm.
And systems like this can help teachers intervene when intervention is necessary, I would think.
Yeah.
My only concern is I still have concerns about the data privacy. And I understand that I still tend to err on the side of privacy and still tend to concern myself with the privacy, particularly when you're talking about children. So as long as this technology is implementing the proper controls and safety measures to make sure that is in place, okay then.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, it's an intimate relationship that your kids have with their teachers.
Yep.
And we put our kids in our teachers' hands for a huge part of their life.
Right.
And trust them to let us know if they think our kids are struggling with something.
Right.
And so shifting that to, I guess, putting a wall between our kids and the teachers, the technological wall, that makes it all the more challenging.
Right.
So maybe software like this can help.
Oh, you're talking about when you say putting a wall, you're talking about the distance.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, the teacher's not walking through the classroom,
right?
Having a sense for that kid just doesn't seem right today.
Yeah, they're not getting as much body language reading from them.
Exactly.
Things of that nature.
Exactly.
Particularly if the kid turns off his camera while he's in class.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And you could imagine a kid who's having trouble, who's struggling, would do just that.
Yep. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, again, our thanks to Justin Reilley for joining us. Really interesting stuff. We do appreciate him taking the time.
Definitely.
We want to thank all of you for listening, and we'd like to thank our sponsor, KnowBe4, the provider of the world's largest security awareness training and simulated phishing platform. CEO fraud is not going away anytime soon, but there are ways to address this problem. Look up KnowBe4 to learn more about their new school approach to security awareness training, and check out their free domain spoof test tool at knowbe4.com/DST to see if your work email addresses are vulnerable to spoofing. That is our show. We want to thank all of you for listening. We want to thank the Johns Hopkins University Information Security Institute for their participation. You can learn more at isi.jhu.edu. The Hacking Humans podcast is proudly produced in Maryland at the startup studios of Data Tribe, where they're co-building the next generation of cybersecurity teams and technologies. Our senior producer is Jennifer Iben. Our executive editor is Peter Kilpie. I'm Dave Bittner.
And I'm Joe Kerrigan.
Thanks for listening.